The ink on the divorce papers hadn't even dried before David Mercer checked his Rolex and laughed. He thought he had just pulled off the heist of the century, stripping his wife of every penny, every asset, and every shred of dignity in a brutal legal battle that lasted 6 months. He watched her walk out of that law firm into the pouring rain with nothing but a suitcase, convinced he had won. He was wrong. He didn't see the black Rolls-Royce Phantom idling at the curb. He didn't see the man inside, a man whose net worth made David's fortune look like pocket change, open the door and smile. Selina didn't lose everything. She was just clearing the path for something bigger. Rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the conference room at Holloway, Reed and Associates in downtown Manhattan. The atmosphere inside was colder than the November storm raging outside. Selina Crawford sat perfectly still. Her hands were folded in her lap, her knuckles white, contrasting with the dark fabric of her worn wool coat. Across the mahogany table sat David Mercer, the man she had loved for 7 years, the man who had promised to build a world with her. Now, he looked at her as if she were a stain on his perfectly tailored Brioni suit. "Just sign it, Selina," David said, his voice dripping with bored irritation. He tapped his finger on the thick document. "We both know you can't afford to drag this out. My lawyers will bury you in litigation fees until you're sleeping under a bridge. Take the settlement. It's generous, considering you contributed nothing to the firm." Nothing. The word hung in the air. Selina thought about the nights she had spent proofreading his business proposals until 3 a.m. She thought about the inheritance from her grandmother she had quietly funneled into his first startup, Mercer Logistics, to keep it afloat during the crash of 2019. She thought of the networking dinners she had hosted, cooking for 12 people because they couldn't afford a caterer yet, charming investors who found David too abrasive. "I want the dog," Selina said softly. It was the first time she had spoken in an hour. David rolled his eyes, looking at his lead attorney, a sharp-faced man named Gregson. "She wants the mutt. Fine. Put it in. Just get her signature on the asset waiver." Gregson slid the paper forward. "Miss Crawford, by signing this, you waive all rights to Mercer Logistics, the property on 5th Avenue, the Aspen Lodge, and any future earnings of Mr. Mercer. You accept the one-time payment of $50,000, and, apparently, the dog. This is final." $50,000. It was an insult. David had just closed a deal with Amazon worth $40 million last week. But Selina didn't flinch. She picked up the pen. She looked David in the eye. He wasn't the man she married. That man had been hungry but kind. This man was bloated with success and blinded by the attention of his new vice president of marketing, a 24-year-old named Jessica, who was currently waiting in the lobby. "I hope it was worth it, David," Selina said, her voice steady. "It's just business, Selina. You're stagnant. I'm evolving. I need a partner who matches my trajectory," David sneered, checking his watch again. "I have a reservation at Le Bernardin at 7. Hurry up." Selina pressed the pen to the paper. The scratch of the nib was the only sound in the room. She signed her name. Selina Crawford, not Mercer. Never again Mercer. She stood up. She didn't check the check Gregson pushed toward her. She simply left it on the table. "You're forgetting your money," David called out, a mocking grin on his face. "You'll need it for rent." "Keep it," Selina said, not turning back. "Consider it a tip for the lesson." David laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "She's delusional," he told his lawyer. "Or she thinks she has pride. Pride doesn't pay the bills in New York City." Selina walked out of the conference room, past the reception desk where Jessica was aggressively typing on her phone. Jessica looked up, smirking. "Bye, Selina. Don't forget to forward David's mail." Selina didn't stop. She pushed through the heavy glass revolving doors and stepped out onto the wet pavement of 6th Avenue. The cold air hit her face, but instead of shivering, she felt a sudden, burning heat in her chest. It wasn't anger. It was relief. The shackles were off. David thought he had stripped her of her value, but he had only stripped her of her burden. She took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of rain and exhaust. She adjusted her scarf. She was 32 years old, divorced, and technically homeless. But as she stood there, watching the rush-hour traffic snarl, she felt lighter than she had in years. Behind her, inside the warm, gold-lit lobby, David was high-fiving his lawyer. He was celebrating his victory. He had no idea that the game had just changed. The rain was coming down harder now, blurring the streetlights into streaks of neon. Selina reached into her bag to pull out her umbrella, but her hand froze. A car had pulled up to the curb directly in front of her. It wasn't a taxi. It wasn't an Uber. It was a Rolls-Royce Phantom, extended wheelbase, painted a deep midnight blue that looked black under the city lights. The vehicle was massive, commanding space on the busy street like a shark in a koi pond. Passers-by slowed down to look, wondering which celebrity or diplomat was about to emerge. Selina took a step back, assuming she was blocking the entrance for some VIP client of the law firm. The rear window purred down silently. "You look like you could use a ride," a deep, baritone voice said from the darkness of the back seat. Selina squinted. "Excuse me?" The door clicked and swung open. A man leaned forward into the light. He was striking, not in the polished, overly groomed way David was, but in a way that felt dangerous and solid. He had dark hair, slightly graying at the temples, and eyes that were an intense, piercing steel grey. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than David's entire year of alimony offers. It was Ethan Caldwell. Selina's breath hitched. She hadn't seen him in 5 years. Not since the charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum, back when David was still struggling and Ethan was just a rumor, a venture capitalist known for ruthless efficiency and reclusive habits. "Ethan?" she whispered. "Get in, Selina. You're getting soaked," he said, a small, unreadable smile playing on his lips. Selina hesitated for only a second. She looked back at the revolving doors of the law firm. She could see David walking out now, holding Jessica's hand, laughing. David stopped. He saw the Rolls-Royce. His eyes went wide. He was a car guy. He knew exactly what that machine was worth. David's gaze moved from the car to Selina standing by the open door. His jaw dropped. Selina turned back to Ethan, slid into the plush leather seat, and pulled the door shut. The world outside, the rain, the noise. David instantly vanished, replaced by the silence of a hermetically sealed cabin that smelled of cedar and expensive leather. "Drive, please, Arthur," Ethan said to the chauffeur. The car glided away from the curb so smoothly it felt like taking flight. Selina sat back, her heart hammering against her ribs. She looked at Ethan. He was watching her, his expression serious but his eyes warm. "How did you know?" Selina asked. "How did you know I was there?" Ethan reached into a compartment and pulled out a bottle of sparkling water, pouring it into a crystal glass. He handed it to her. "I make it my business to know when valuable assets are being discarded by fools," Ethan said. "I've been tracking the divorce proceedings, Selina. I know what he did. I know about the forensic accounting he hid. I know about the offshore accounts in the Caymans under his mother's maiden name." Selina stared at him. You investigated him." "I investigated him because I was interested in you," Ethan corrected. 5 years ago, at that gala, you pitched me an idea. Do you remember? You talked about sustainable logistics networks using AI. David laughed at you. He told you to go get more champagne. Selina nodded slowly. She remembered. She had spent months researching that idea. David had called it cute and told her to focus on being a wife. "I didn't forget," Ethan said, "and neither did the market. That idea is the future, Selina. But David Mercer isn't the one who can build it. He's a middleman. He's a salesman. He's not a visionary." Ethan tapped a tablet resting on the console between them. The screen lit up, displaying a complex corporate structure tree. "David thinks he just won," Ethan said, his voice dropping an octave. "He thinks he secured full ownership of Mercer Logistics. What he doesn't know is that Mercer Logistics is currently leveraged to the hilt. He borrowed against the company to buy out your shares, using a private equity firm as the lender. Selina frowned. I didn't know he took a loan. He did. High interest. Risky. Ethan paused, allowing a cruel, satisfied smile to surface. Selina, do you know who owns the private equity firm that just loaned your ex-husband $40 million? Selina looked at the man beside her. The realization hit her like a physical blow. You, she breathed. Me, Ethan confirmed. I own the debt. I own the leverage. And as of 10 minutes ago, when he signed that agreement claiming full liability for the company's future, I effectively own him. Ethan turned to face her fully. He treated you like an accessory, Selina. I'm here to offer you a partnership. I bought the debt, but I need a CEO to run the takeover when he inevitably defaults. I don't want David. I want the person who actually built the company from the shadows. Selina looked out the tinted window. They were passing Central Park now. She thought of David's laughing face as she walked out in the rain. Why? She asked. Because, Ethan said, reaching out to gently cover her hand with his. His skin was warm. I hate seeing potential wasted, and I've been waiting a long time for you to be free. Selina looked down at their hands. For the first time in months, the future didn't look like a black hole. It looked like a battlefield. And this time, she had the heavy artillery. He kept the dog, Selina said suddenly. I asked for the dog, but he's going to neglect him. Ethan picked up his phone. Arthur, detour to the Mercer residence in Tribeca. We have a pickup to make. You can't just take the dog, Ethan. That's theft. Ethan winked. It's not theft, Selina. It's asset recovery. The Rolls-Royce idled quietly outside the Tribeca Towers, a building where the doorman wore emerald uniforms, and the rent for a one-bedroom apartment cost more than a surgeon's annual salary. Selina stared up at the 42nd floor. The lights were on. Do you have a key? Ethan asked, his voice low and devoid of judgment. He hasn't changed the locks yet, Selina said, clutching her purse. He's too arrogant. He thinks I'm too broken to come back, and he thinks he's too untouchable to be robbed. I'll wait here, Ethan said. If you're not down in 10 minutes, I'm coming up, and I won't be polite. Selina nodded and stepped out into the rain. The doorman, an older man named Henry, who had always had a soft spot for Selina, widened his eyes as she approached. He moved to block her path, then hesitated. Mrs. Mercer. Miss Crawford, Henry stammered, looking nervously towards the security cameras. Mr. Mercer left strict instructions. No guests. Especially not, well, you. Selina stopped, straightening her spine. The woman who had signed those papers 2 hours ago would have turned around. But the woman who had just ridden in Ethan Caldwell's car felt a surge of adrenaline. I'm not a guest, Henry, Selina said, her voice cool and authoritative. I'm here to pick up my property as per the legal agreement signed today, unless you want to explain to the police why you're obstructing a court-mandated asset retrieval. It was a bluff. The court order hadn't been filed yet, but Henry didn't know that. He glanced at the Rolls-Royce, waiting like a predator at the curb, then back at Selina. He sighed and swiped his pass card. The service elevator, ma'am. Quickly. He's out at dinner, but the new lady friend, she's upstairs. Selina's stomach tightened. Jessica was there. She took the service elevator up, the smell of industrial cleaner stinging her nose. When the doors opened into the penthouse kitchen, the first thing she heard was music. Loud thumping bass. The apartment, usually pristine under Selina's care, was a disaster. There were empty champagne bottles on the marble island, takeout containers strewn across the bespoke Italian sofa, and a distinct smell of stale smoke. Selina moved silently across the travertine floors. She headed straight for the laundry room, where David usually locked Baxter when he didn't want the noise. She opened the door. Baxter, a 4-year-old golden retriever, was curled up on a pile of dirty towels, shivering. When he saw Selina, he let out a whine that broke her heart, scrambling to his paws and burying his head into her stomach. "I've got you, buddy. I'm sorry," she whispered, clipping on his leash. "We're leaving." She turned to leave, but stopped. On the hallway console table, amidst a pile of unopened mail, sat a blue velvet box. It was open. Inside was a diamond tennis bracelet. Selina froze. It wasn't the jewelry that stopped her. It was the receipt tucked underneath it. She pulled it out. The date was from 3 years ago. 3 years. David hadn't just met Jessica a few months ago, as he claimed. He hadn't drifted apart from Selina recently. He had been buying 5-figure gifts for another woman, while Selina was selling her grandmother's jewelry to make payroll for his company. A cold fury settled over her. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply took the receipt, folded it neatly, and put it in her pocket. "Hey, who is that?" The voice was shrill. Selina looked up to see Jessica standing at the top of the floating staircase. She was wearing one of Selina's old silk robes, the one David had given her for their 5th anniversary. Jessica's eyes went wide. "You? How did you get in here? David said you were gone." "I am gone," Selina said, her voice steady. "I'm just taking the only thing in this house with a soul." She gestured to the dog. Jessica sneered, descending the stairs. She looked younger than Selina, smoother, but there was a hardness in her eyes that makeup couldn't hide. "Get out, or I'm calling the police. David told me you were pathetic, but breaking and entering, that's desperate even for you." "Tell David something for me," Selina said, stepping closer. Jessica flinched, stepping back. "Tell him I found the receipt from Cartier, dated March 2021. Tell him I know about the consulting fees he paid to your father's shell company in Jersey, and tell him that when the IRS looks at the books, they aren't going to be looking at me." Jessica's face went pale. "What are you talking about?" "You'll find out," Selina said. She tugged on Baxter's leash. "Come on, boy. This place smells like trash." She walked out the front door, slamming it shut behind her. When she emerged from the lobby, rain soaking her hair, Ethan was standing outside the car, holding a large black umbrella. He saw her face, the mix of rage and liberation, and he didn't say a word. He just opened the back door. Baxter hopped in, instantly shaking water all over the pristine leather interior. Ethan didn't even blink. "Tribeca isn't home anymore," Ethan said as the car pulled away. "Where to?" "I don't have anywhere," Selina admitted, the adrenaline fading, leaving her exhausted. "I have no apartment, no job, and $50,000 that won't last 6 months in this city." Ethan pressed a button on the intercom. "Arthur, take us to the Obsidian." Selina looked at him. The Obsidian was the newest, most exclusive residential skyscraper in Manhattan. Ethan Caldwell owned it. "I'm not a charity case, Ethan," she warned. "I know," Ethan replied, pulling a tablet from his briefcase. He handed it to her. "That's why you're going to work for it." Selina looked at the screen. It was a contract. Role, Chief Strategy Officer. Company, Aurelius Ventures, a subsidiary of Caldwell Holdings. Salary, $450,000 per annum, plus stock options. Signing bonus, housing accommodation at the Obsidian, Unit 55B. Selina stared at the numbers. "I don't understand. Why?" "Because David Mercer is going to crash that company within 6 months, Ethan said, his eyes hard as flint. "And when he does, I'm going to buy it for pennies on the dollar. I need someone who knows where the bodies are buried. I need someone who knows the code, the clients, and the lies." He poured himself a drink, looking at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I'm not hiring you because I feel sorry for you, Selina. I'm hiring you because you're the weapon that's going to take him down." "Do we have a deal?" Selina looked at the contract. Then she looked at the rain streaking the window, blurring the city that had chewed her up and spit her out. She picked up the digital stylus. "We have a deal," she said. 6 months had passed. To the outside world, David Mercer was living the dream. He was the CEO of Mercer Logistics. He was dating a former model, and he was a regular on the Manhattan social circuit. But inside the glass walls of his office, the air was running out. "Where is the report on the Asian supply chain?" David barked, throwing a file across the desk. Jessica, who had insisted on being made Director of Operations despite having no experience, looked up from her phone. She was filing her nails. "I told the interns to do it. They said the data is corrupted or something. David, can we go? The reservations at Nobu are for 8. "I can't go to Nobu, Jessica," David shouted, running a hand through his thinning hair. "We just lost the FedEx contract renewal. Do you know how much that was worth? 12 million. "So get another one," Jessica shrugged. "You're the genius. You always said Selena held you back. Now she's gone, so go be a genius." David gritted his teeth. That was the problem. He had spent years convinced that he was the visionary, and Selena was just the secretary. But in the last 6 months, he had realized the terrifying truth. Selena hadn't just proofread documents. She had maintained the relationships. She remembered the clients' birthdays. She knew how to calm down the union leaders when they threatened to strike. She knew the intricate coding of their proprietary tracking software. Since she left, the software had developed bugs nobody could fix. The union was threatening a walkout, and the clients, people David thought were his friends, were ghosting him. His intercom buzzed. "Mr. Mercer, there's a call from the bank on line 1. It's regarding the credit facility." David paled. "Tell them I'm in a meeting." "They say it's urgent, sir. They're saying something about a breach of covenant." David snatched the phone up. "This is Mercer. Mr. Mercer." A cold, metallic voice spoke on the other end. "This is legal counsel for Titanium Equity Partners. We hold the lien on your operating capital. We've noticed a 30% drop in your EBITDA over the last 2 quarters. "It's a temporary fluctuation," David lied, sweat beading on his forehead. "The market is volatile." "The market is up, Mr. Mercer. Your competitors are up. You are down. According to the terms of your loan, a drop of this magnitude triggers a mandatory review. We are calling an emergency board meeting for Friday." "Friday? That's in 2 days. I can't preparation. Friday at 9 a.m. or we foreclose. Good day." The line went dead. David slammed the phone down. He looked at Jessica, who was now applying lipstick. "Get out," he whispered. "Excuse me?" "I said get out," David roared. "I have to fix this. I have to fix everything." He needed a miracle. He needed capital. And he knew only one person with pockets deep enough and a history of risky investments. He pulled up his contacts and dialed Ethan Caldwell's office. He had met Ethan once or twice, and while the man was intimidating, David was sure he could charm him. He would pitch a new vision. "Caldwell Holdings," a receptionist answered. "This is David Mercer. I need to speak with Mr. Caldwell immediately. It's a business opportunity he won't want to miss." There was a pause. "Mr. Caldwell is currently traveling, but his chief strategy officer handles all logistics acquisitions. I can schedule you for a meeting on Friday morning." "Friday morning? Actually, that's perfect." David smiled. Fate was on his side. He would secure new funding from Caldwell on Friday morning, then walk into the board meeting with Titanium Equity and slap a check on the table. "Who is the strategy officer?" David asked. "Her name is confidential until the meeting, sir. Company policy." Fine. Just put me in the calendar." David hung up, leaning back in his chair. He exhaled. He was a survivor. He would charm this strategy officer, get the money, and prove everyone wrong. Underscore. The morning of the meeting, the sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue. David dressed in his best navy suit, shaved closely, and practiced his smile in the mirror. He looked successful. He felt successful. He arrived at Caldwell Holdings 10 minutes early. The building was a monolith of glass and steel in Hudson Yards. He was escorted to the top floor, into a boardroom that overlooked the entire island of Manhattan. The room was empty, except for a man standing by the window with his back turned. "Mr. Caldwell?" David asked, stepping forward, hand extended. The man turned around. It was Ethan Caldwell. "Mr. Mercer," Ethan said, his face unreadable. He didn't shake David's hand. "Please, sit." David sat, slightly confused. "I thought you were traveling." "I came back for this," Ethan said. "You're looking for capital, David?" "I am." David launched into his pitch, his voice smooth. "Mercer Logistics is on the verge of a breakthrough. We're integrating AI to streamline shipping. We just need a bridge loan of $20 million to finalize the software. The return on investment will be triple within a year." Ethan stared at him for a long moment. AI integration. Interesting. And who is leading your tech team now? "Top men," David lied. "Best in the industry." "I see." Ethan tapped the table. "I'm inclined to consider it. But I don't make these decisions alone. I rely on my chief strategy officer to vet all distressed assets." "Distressed?" David bristled. "We're not distressed. We're expanding." "We'll see," Ethan said. He looked toward the double doors at the end of the room. "Please, come in." The doors opened. The click of heels on the marble floor was sharp and rhythmic. David turned in his chair, a confident smile plastered on his face, ready to charm the executive. The smile died. Selina walked in, but it wasn't the Selina he remembered. The Selina he knew wore oversized cardigans and messy buns. This woman was wearing a tailored white suit that looked like it had been sculpted to her body. Her hair was cut in a sharp, chic bob. She wore stiletto heels that added 3 inches to her height, and she carried a slim leather portfolio. But the biggest difference was her face. The look of perpetual worry and deference was gone. In its place was a calm, terrifying confidence. She walked to the head of the table opposite Ethan and placed her portfolio down. She didn't even look at David. "Selina?" David choked out, half standing. What are you doing here? Did you get a job as an assistant?" Selina slowly turned her head. Her eyes were cold. "Sit down, David," she said. "It wasn't a request. I'm sorry, there must be a mistake," David said, looking frantically at Ethan. "This is my ex-wife. She was a secretary at my firm. She's not qualified to be here." "Actually," Ethan said, leaning back and crossing his arms, "Selina is the architect of my current portfolio strategy, and she is the one who flagged your company as a potential acquisition target 6 months ago." "Acquisition?" David laughed nervously. "I'm not selling." "You might not have a choice," Selina said, opening her folder. "Let's look at the numbers, shall we?" She projected a slide onto the glass wall. "Since November, Mercer Logistics has lost 4 key accounts: FedEx, Cisco, Walmart, and Target. Your operating costs have ballooned by 40% due to reliance on third-party contractors because you fired your in-house team, and your debt-to-equity ratio is currently sitting at a catastrophic level." David stared at the screen. The numbers were accurate, terrifyingly accurate. How do you know this?" "Because I built the system you're failing to run," Selina said. "I know the margins better than you do. I know that you've been siphoning company funds to pay for a leased penthouse in Tribeca and a Porsche Cayenne for your girlfriend, listing them as marketing expenses." David's face went white. That's private corporate strategy." "It's embezzlement," Selina corrected, "and it's a breach of your loan covenants." "So what?" David sneered, trying to regain ground. "You're going to tattle on me? I'm here for a loan. If you don't give it to me, I'll go elsewhere." "You can't go elsewhere," Selina said softly. "Why not?" "Because," Ethan interjected, his voice like a gavel strike. "Remember the private equity firm that holds your current debt? Titanium Equity Partners?" "Yes," David said slowly. I own it, Ethan smiled, and Selina runs it. The silence in the room was deafening. David looked from Ethan to Selina. The trap snapped shut. You own my debt, David whispered. We own you, Selina corrected, and as of this morning, your loan is in default. We are exercising our right to accelerate the debt. You owe us $40 million, David, payable immediately. I don't have $40 million, David shouted, standing up. You know I don't. We know, Selina said calmly, which is why we are offering you a deal, a takeover. She slid a single piece of paper across the long table. It stopped right in front of him. We acquire Mercer Logistics for the price of the outstanding debt. You step down as CEO immediately. You surrender your shares, and you walk away. Walk away with what? David asked, his voice trembling. Selina smiled. It was the same smile he had given her in the law firm 6 months ago. Nothing, she said. Consider it a tip for the lesson. David stared at the paper. His hands were shaking. He looked at Ethan, hoping for mercy from one man to another. I wouldn't keep her waiting, Ethan said dryly. She has a lunch reservation at Le Bernardin. The pen felt like it weighed 100 pounds in David's hand. The silence in the boardroom was absolute. Outside the glass walls, the sun was shining on the Hudson River, ferries cutting through the water, the world moving on. But inside, David's world had stopped. He looked at the document. Transfer of control and assets. If I sign this, David croaked, his voice cracking, I keep the apartment. The car. Selina didn't blink. The apartment is company property, David. You listed it as a corporate satellite office to write off the taxes. It goes with the company. The Porsche is leased under the company name. It goes too. Then what do I have? David slammed his hand on the table. You're stripping me naked. You have your freedom, Ethan said, his voice low and dangerous. And you have immunity from prosecution. If we take this to court, the forensic accountants will find the embezzlement. You won't just be broke, David. You'll be in federal prison. David looked at Ethan's steel-grey eyes. He saw no bluff there. He looked at Selina. He looked for a trace of the woman who used to rub his shoulders after a long day, the woman who had nursed him through the flu. She was gone. In her place was a CEO who looked at him like a bad line item on a balance sheet. David signed. The scratch of the pen was the sound of his empire crumbling. He pushed the paper across the table. Selina took it, checked the signature, and placed it in her portfolio. Arthur will escort you out, Ethan said. Your access cards have already been deactivated. David stood up. He tried to muster some dignity, straightening his tie. You think you've won, he sneered at Selina. But that company is a sinking ship. Good luck fixing the mess I left. I cleaned up your messes for 7 years, David, Selina said, not even looking up from her iPad. This is just one more. David turned and stormed out. He expected the receptionist to look at him with pity, but she didn't even look up. He was already a ghost. He took the elevator down to the lobby. His phone buzzed. It was Jessica. Hey, babe, are we still on for the Hamptons this weekend? I need to buy a new bikini. David stared at the screen. He felt a wave of nausea. He walked out of the building and into the blinding midday sun. He dialed her number. Jess, he said when she answered. David, finally. Did you get the money from that Caldwell guy? Can we book the jet? Listen to me, David said, his breath coming in short gasps. There's been a strategic pivot. I sold the company. You sold it? Jessica's voice went up an octave. For how much? Millions? It's complicated, David stammered. I had to let it go to cover some positions. We're going to have to downsize for a bit. Move out of the penthouse. Maybe get a place in Jersey City until I get my next venture off the ground. There was a long silence on the other end. Jersey City? Jessica repeated, the word tasting like poison in her mouth. Just for a few months. I'm a visionary, Jess. I'll build it back. I just need you to stand by me. We're a team, right? David, Jessica said, her voice completely flat. I'm breaking up with you. What, Jess? No. You said you loved me. I loved the lifestyle, David. I'm 24. I'm not moving to Jersey to watch you have a midlife crisis on a budget. Don't call me. Click. David stood on the corner of 10th Avenue. He looked at his phone. Blocked. He walked to the curb to hail a cab, then realized his corporate credit card, the one linked to his Uber account, was likely frozen. He checked his personal debit account. $400. He started walking. He walked all the way back to Tribeca. When he got to his building, the doorman, Henry, was standing outside. Mr. Mercer, Henry said, looking uncomfortable. I'm afraid I can't let you up. I live here, Henry. Not anymore, sir. The new ownership sent over an eviction notice effective immediately. They've packed your personal effects. Henry pointed to 3 cardboard boxes sitting on the wet pavement near the service entrance. David walked over to the boxes. He opened the top one. It was his clothes, his gym shoes, and on top, a framed photo of him and Selina from their wedding day. The glass was cracked. It started to rain again. David sat down on the curb next to his boxers, the water soaking into his bespoke suit. He put his head in his hands. Across the street, parked in the shadows, a black SUV watched. Inside, Ethan lowered the binoculars. He's done, Ethan said into his phone. He's got nothing. Good, Selina's voice came through the speaker. Now let's get to work. The transition was brutal. The morning Selina walked into Mercer Logistics, now rebranded as Nexus Supply Chain, the atmosphere was toxic. David had left the staff demoralized, underpaid, and terrified of management. Selina didn't go to the corner office. She went to the floor. She walked into the open-plan workspace where the logistics coordinators sat. The room went silent. They knew who she was, the ex-wife. They expected her to be bitter, vengeful, or incompetent. Good morning, Selina said, her voice clear. My name is Selina Crawford. I'm the new CEO. Some of you might remember me bringing coffee or fixing the printer 3 years ago. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the room. A senior analyst, a man named Robert, who had been David's frat brother, crossed his arms. So what's the plan, Selina? Robert asked condescendingly. We're bleeding cash. Are you going to bake us cookies, or do you actually know how to run a supply chain? The room gasped. Selina turned to Robert. She didn't flinch. Robert, currently your department is routing all Midwest shipments through a hub in Chicago that has a 20% delay rate due to union strikes. You've cost the company $200,000 this month alone because you refuse to switch to the St. Louis alternate route. Is that correct? Robert's face turned red. The St. Louis route is more expensive per mile. It's 10 cents more per mile, but it arrives on time, Selina countered instantly. Late penalties cost us $5,000 a day. Do the math, Robert. She turned back to the room. I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to save your jobs. Effective immediately, all executive bonuses are frozen, including mine. We are redirecting that capital to pay overtime for the ground staff who have been working unpaid hours. A murmur of shock went through the room. We are implementing the AI routing system I designed. Training starts tomorrow. If you're not on board with the new direction, you can collect your severance package from HR by noon. Now let's get to work. She turned and walked toward her office. Behind her, the silence broke into excited whispers. She hadn't just taken charge, she had won the room. Inside her office, Ethan was waiting. He was sitting on the edge of her desk, holding a bottle of champagne. That was impressive, he said, smiling. Robert looked like he swallowed a lemon. Selina exhaled, leaning against the door. I was terrified. You didn't show it. Ethan stood up and poured 2 glasses. To the new Queen of Logistics. Selina took the glass, but her hand was trembling slightly. It's not over, Ethan. David isn't the type to just fade away. He has an ego the size of this building. He'll try something. Let him try, Ethan said, stepping closer. "He has no leverage." "He has the press," Selina said. "He knows people. He can spin a narrative that I stole the company, that I seduced you to destroy him." "Let them talk," Ethan said, his voice soft. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The touch sent a jolt of electricity through her. "Selina, look at what you've done in a week. You're brilliant. You're strong. You don't need to fear a man like David Mercer anymore." They stood close, the air between them charged with a tension that had been building for 6 months. Selina looked up at his lips. She wanted to kiss him. She wanted to forget the business, the revenge, the past. But she pulled back. "I can't," she whispered. "Not yet. Until the company is stable. Until I know I'm safe. I can't let this get messy." Ethan nodded, respecting her boundary, though disappointment flickered in his eyes. "Understood. Strictly business." But it wasn't strictly business, and they both knew it. Underscore, 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 underscore. 2 weeks later, the blow came. It was the night of the Global Trade Gala, the biggest event of the year for the logistics industry. Selina was the keynote speaker. It was her moment to announce the rebrand and secure the contracts they needed to survive. She wore a gown of emerald green silk, looking every inch the power player. Ethan was by her side in a tuxedo. As they walked the red carpet, flashbulbs blinded them. "Miss Crawford! Miss Crawford! Is it true?" a reporter shouted, thrusting a microphone in her face. "Is what true?" Selina paused, smiling for the cameras. "The allegations. That you falsified the corporate records to frame your ex-husband? That you and Mr. Caldwell conspired to defraud the shareholders?" Selina's smile froze. "That's ridiculous." Ethan stepped in, shielding her. "No comment." But the reporter held up a phone. "We have a source. An anonymous whistleblower has released emails suggesting you planted the embezzlement evidence." Selina felt the blood drain from her face. David. She pushed through the crowd into the ballroom. Her phone started blowing up. Stocks for Nexus Supply Chain were plummeting in after-hours trading. "He faked them," Selina hissed to Ethan as they found a quiet corner. "He forged emails to make it look like a setup." "It doesn't matter if they're fake," Ethan said grimly, checking his phone. "The board is panicking. If the stock drops another 10 points, they'll call for a vote of no confidence. You'll be removed as CEO before the night is over." Selina looked across the ballroom. There, standing near the bar, was David. He looked haggard. His suit was ill-fitting, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. But he was grinning. He raised a glass of cheap wine to her. He had nothing left to lose, so he had decided to burn the whole world down. He wants a payout, Selina realized. He's doing this to force a settlement. "Don't give it to him," Ethan said. "We fight this." "We don't have time to fight it, Ethan. The investors are walking now. Look!" She pointed to a group of Japanese investors, key to their Asian expansion, who were checking their phones and looking at Selina with suspicion. They were heading for the exit. Selina took a deep breath. She smoothed her dress. "I'm going to talk to him." "Selina, don't." "That's what he wants." "I know," Selina said, her eyes hard. "But he's forgetting one thing. I was his wife for 7 years. I know where he hides the real dirt." She walked across the ballroom floor. The crowd parted for her. The music seemed to stop. She walked right up to David. "Hello, David," she said. "Selina," David slurred slightly. "Enjoying the party?" "Shame about the news. Looks like your boyfriend can't buy his way out of this one." "How much do you want to retract the statement?" Selina asked quietly. David laughed. 5 million. Cash. Tonight. And I want my dog back." Selina stared at him. He was pathetic. A hollow shell of a man. "No," she said. "Then watch your company burn," David snarled. "David," Selina said, stepping closer. her voice a whisper that only he could hear. "Do you remember the trip we took to the Cayman Islands in 2018? The one where you met with those investors from Russia?" David's smile faltered. "What about it?" "I was the one who booked the travel, David. I was the one who organized the files, and I was the one who kept the recording of the meeting where you agreed to launder money for them through the shipping containers." David's face went ash grey. The glass of wine shook in his hand. You're lying. You would have used that already." "I didn't use it because it would have implicated the company I was trying to save," Selina said. "But if you burn the company down tonight, I have no reason to protect it anymore. I will release that recording to the FBI within 10 minutes. "You'll go down too," David whispered. "You were the wife. You knew." "I have immunity," Selina lied. It was a gamble, a massive bluff. Ethan's lawyers secured it weeks ago. I walk. You go to federal prison for 20 years, and trust me, David, you won't survive prison." David stared at her. He searched her eyes for fear, for hesitation. He found none. He saw only the cold, hard steel of a woman who had been forged in the fire he created. 5 minutes, Selina said. "Issue a retraction. Tell the press you were angry and drunk and you made it up, or I hit send." She held up her phone. Her finger hovered over a file named Cayman_. Meeting_audio.mp3. David sweated. He looked at the exit. He looked at the Russian investors across the room, imagining what they would do if that tape leaked. "Fine," he choked out. "Fine. You win. Just delete it." "Retraction first," Selina said. David stumbled towards the stage. He grabbed the microphone from the band leader. The feedback screeched, silencing the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," David said, his voice shaking. I need to say something. The rumors, the emails, they were a mistake, a misunderstanding. Selina Crawford she is the most honest person I know. I was jealous. I'm sorry." He dropped the mic and ran. He ran out the side door, into the night, and out of Selina's life forever. Selina stood in the center of the room. Silence stretched for a second. Then Ethan started clapping. Slowly the room joined in. The applause swelled, growing louder and louder until it was a thunderous ovation. Selina looked at Ethan. He was smiling. She had won, but she was still holding the phone. She looked down at the file. It wasn't an audio recording. It was just a playlist of her favorite songs. She smiled, deleted the file, and walked toward Ethan. The applause inside the ballroom was still thundering, but Selina had slipped away. She needed air. She stepped out onto the wide stone terrace overlooking the harbor. The cool night breeze felt good against her flushed skin. Her heart was still racing from the adrenaline of the confrontation. She had gambled everything on a bluff, a playlist of 80s pop songs disguised as federal evidence, and she had won. She heard the heavy glass door open behind her. She didn't turn around. She knew the cadence of those footsteps. Solid, assured. "You are a terrifying woman, Selina Crawford," Ethan said, moving to stand beside her at the railing. Selina laughed, a sound that felt lighter than it had in a decade. "I learned from the best." Ethan handed her a fresh glass of champagne. "I saw David running for a taxi. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. What was actually on the phone?" "The Cayman audio." Selina took a sip, the bubbles sharp on her tongue. She smiled mischievously. "There was no audio, Ethan. I deleted those files 3 years ago because I was too afraid to use them. The file I threatened him with? It was a playlist called Workout Jams." Ethan stared at her for a second, stunned. Then he threw his head back and laughed, a deep, genuine sound that echoed into the night. "You bluffed him," Ethan shook his head, looking at her with absolute awe. "You wagered a multi-million-dollar company on a bluff." "I knew him," Selina said softly, looking out at the city lights reflecting on the water. "I knew that underneath the arrogance, he's a coward. He was always afraid that people would see he was a fraud. I just held up a mirror." Ethan turned his body toward her, his expression shifting from amusement to something deeper. The city lights cast shadows across his sharp jawline, softening the steel of his eyes. "You saved the company tonight, Selina. The stock is already rebounding. The Japanese investors just texted me. They want to double their commitment. You did it." "We did it," Selina corrected. "No," Ethan stepped closer, invading her personal space in a way that made her breath hitch. "You did. I just opened the door. You walked through it." He reached out, his hand lingering near her waist. "6 months ago, I told you I wanted to hire you because I hated seeing potential wasted," Ethan said, his voice dropping to a murmur. "That was true. But it wasn't the whole truth." Selina looked up at him. What was the truth? "The truth is," Ethan said, "I've been jealous of David Mercer since the moment I met you 5 years ago. Not because of his company, or his car, or his luck, but because he got to wake up next to the smartest, most beautiful woman in New York, and he was too stupid to realize what he had." Selina's breath caught. The walls she had built around her heart, the walls David had reinforced with every criticism and betrayal, crumbled. "I'm not that broken woman in the rain anymore, Ethan," she whispered. "I know," Ethan said. "And I'm not just an investor anymore. I don't want to be your boss, Selina. I want to be your partner in everything." He leaned down. Selina didn't pull away. She rose to meet him. When their lips touched, it wasn't like the rainstorm. It was like the sunrise after a long, dark winter. It was warm, steady, and promised a future that belonged entirely to her. 1 year later. The morning sun streamed into the penthouse of the Obsidian, illuminating the messy bed sheets and the sleeping golden retriever at the foot of the bed. Baxter snored softly. Selina walked into the kitchen, wearing one of Ethan's shirts. She poured coffee, checking the tablet on the granite island. Market watch, Nexus supply chain, NXS, hits record high. CEO Selina Crawford named Executive of the Year by Forbes. She smiled, swiping to the next article. Gossip column, former logistics tycoon. David Mercer spotted working as a shift manager at a car rental agency in New Jersey. Sources say he is currently facing lawsuits from multiple creditors. Selina felt a twinge of pity, but it was fleeting. David had chosen his path. She had chosen hers. She felt strong arms wrap around her waist from behind. Ethan rested his chin on her shoulder, kissing the side of her neck. "Stop working," he mumbled. "It's Sunday. We have a flight to Paris in 3 hours." "Just checking the numbers," Selina said, leaning back into him. "We're up 12% this quarter." "I don't care about the numbers," Ethan said, turning her around to face him. He looked happy. "Younger. I only care about the asset." "Which asset?" Selina teased. "The one I'm holding," Ethan said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Not blue. Red. "Selina," he said, his eyes serious. "We've conquered the market. We've destroyed the competition. I think it's time for a merger." Selina looked at the ring. It was simple, elegant, and flawless. "Is this a hostile takeover?" she asked, tears pricking her eyes. "No," Ethan smiled, the billionaire who had opened the door and changed her life. "It's a joint venture. Forever." Selina kissed him. "Deal," she said. Baxter barked in approval. And that is how Selina went from signing her life away in a rainy parking lot to running an empire. David thought he could strip her of her value, but he forgot the most important rule of business and life. Your worth isn't determined by who leaves you, but by what you build after they're gone. Selina didn't just get revenge. She got a life that David could only dream of. What would you have done if you were in Selina's shoes? Would you have exposed David's secrets earlier, or did she play the perfect game? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice, romance, and karma, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that their best days are still ahead of them. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.